when you're grazing the multi-species, it's not going to look as uniform as your perennial ryegrass sward. That's one thing that just kind of you need to get into your head to start with, or you're going to be kind of fighting a losing battle. So we grazed it down to 5 centimeters and took them out, trying to keep a low residency time in each paddock. When they pick out the herbs, they'll keep picking the herbs and clover and leave the stemier ryegrass if it does get to stem. So that'll then therefore hamper your herb and clover content and regrowth, and you're going to be left with a lot of unpalatable grass. So we will go in year 2 onwards and top to the 5 centimeters if required.
Hello, I'm Kieran Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode will bring you the latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. Now in this episode we catch up with Jonathan Higgins, who along with his father Philip runs a mid-season lamb and flock alongside a contract heifer-rearing system in Skreen, County Sligo. The duo are the hosts of this year's Irish Grassland Association Sheep Farm Walk. Jonathan talks to us about the contract rearing system and we delve into the performance and management of the yoke flock in detail. We also explore the challenges of farming on a fragmented unit with varying land types. We spend some time discussing the role of multi-species swards on the farm, with Jonathan sharing his experience of managing them over the past few seasons. We start the discussion with Jonathan giving a little bit of background to the farming system.
So we're farming on the west coast of Ireland in the west of Sligo, just on the Sligo to Ballina road. So right beside the sea, really. We've a good chunk, about 60% of the land is in one block around the yard, and then the other third is split into 3 out blocks, about 2 to 5 kilometers away from the yard. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. So the home farm, a lot of it is quite suitable for cutting and intensive grazing, and then some of the out farm parts, while there's good parts, there's also very challenging parts that you wouldn't go near even with a topper.
The land can be variable there, changes very quick.
Yeah, and that's only 2 miles difference really. Like it just depends on the field. Some fields, you're not going to go in if it's heavy rain for the week. You're not going to put the heifers in there, kind of things like that. So you kind of have to play it by ear too.
It throws up its challenges. Look at in dry year, I suppose there are areas that get you out of jail too. But it's a mixed type of land. It is typical of where you're farming. You mentioned heifers. Might just talk a little bit about the stock for a moment. What kind of system are you running on the farm?
Back in 2019, we started contract rearing heifers. So we used to suckler farm, where we used to finish a lot of the cattle and then move to weaning, selling them at weaning. Then we moved. That was on top of a mid-season lambing flock. So we kept the ewes and kept mid-season lambing, and we moved to contract rearing heifers alongside that back in 2019, and gradually increased the numbers up to now really.
Big change in system, but probably lends itself maybe slightly better to the type of land you're farming on, the fragmented nature of it too. Just we'll talk a little bit about the heifers maybe first. Big change from the sucklers previously, possibly lends itself better to the nature of the farm. Maybe talk to us a little bit more about that. Numbers wise, how many sources they're coming from, when they're coming on the farm?
Yeah, so they all come from one farm in County Meath. We get them, they're January born. We get them the start of May. So they're off milk, so they're only and they go straight out the field when we get them. So we keep them on concentrates then for the first summer. We house them over their winter one. They eye them middle of April. Let them out start of May. And obviously they're still in the repeat cycles then till the start of July, and then they go back the start of September back to the host farmer. So during the winter we have one group. During the summer we have two groups, the calves and the 1.5-year-olds. So it's kind of works well for a leader follower system as well. Started off with 60 to see would it work for us and for the dairy farmer, and we're up to about 160 calves and 160 1.5-year-olds now.
Okay, big numbers,
but it's especially with the heifer, the 1.5-year-old heifer group, it's great grazing power when you're trying to clear out fields after the calves or after the ewes and lambs.
It is, I suppose, we put in context, a couple of busy weeks around AI certainly, but there's a lot of that work is structured with them.
Yeah, so they have heat detection collars. So the first mating for all of them is indoors, and a lot of them are within the first 14 days. So by the end of April, a lot of them will have been served once. They get out then, and there's a second round of AI for any the first round of repeats is AI, and then there's two bulls come then for the second 6 weeks.
Suppose, John, and the fact too that they're leaving the farm in September, it does lend itself well to run the sheep system with them. It takes a lot of pressure off grazing ground at that time of the year.
It does, yeah. Especially with the kind of the rainfall, we kind of get you kind of starting to really slow down. Growth is really slowed down, and grass is really starting to disappear. Come the first of September, so it really works well for us that they leave at that stage. The cows really start eating grass kind of come the 1st of August, and obviously with the weaned lambs, starting to devour more day on day. There's a real demand for grass in August, so it's nice to relieve that come 1st September.
Yeah, it's a nice balance in it. We better talk a little bit about the sheep flock. So we may you stuck with the ewes when the cows went. Talk to me a little bit about ewe numbers, the type of ewe you're running.
The year gone by, we lambed down 250 ewes. So they're first cross off the mule for which with the Suffolk and Texel. And then there is obviously some mules then as well, which are brought in from Ballinrobe each year. With some of our own homebred Belclare cross Texels as well, just to increase the prolificacy from a homegrown source rather than all purchased of the mules.
So I suppose the base to the flock or number, if you went back a few years before, was nearly all mule predominantly, I think, John, and then it was Suffolk back on them was your foundation,
Yeah,
really.
exactly. And then as the numbers fluctuated, when we increased numbers back in the late 2010s, there would have been a few different breeds, kept some soft Texas and stuff, but it's very much gone back to mules and first cross off mules, or Belclare cross.
And then Belclares, they're going back on that Suffolk mule or go back on the Texel off them.
The Texel mule, really, yeah.
And then, like for your terminal sires back, Suffolk Texel.
When it comes to mating, we put Suffolk ram tends to go with mules, and then we put a Texel ram on the Suffolk mules. The Belclare goes on some of the Texel mules, and then on all the old lambs, we put a Beltex.
There's a wee bit on pack of this. The old lambs have been mated as well on the farm, like so. Talk
Yeah,
to me a little bit about them.
yeah. So, the year gone by, they stand at 1.4. So, we like to get a lamb off them that they're doing something for the year, that they're not just being carried.
So with those old lambs, are you mating them for long, Jonathan, or they kind of coming in towards the latter half of the ewes lambing?
For the past few years, we have synchronized them to lamb at the start. This year they were at the end again, but we're going to revert back to getting them near the start. The rams traditionally would have gone in at the same time as the ewes, but the ewe lambs necessarily wouldn't have come on as quickly. So we synchronized them and found that it was great to get them going and to get them started with, so that there's maybe less problems near the end of lambing. This year we didn't synchronize them, but we definitely are considering going back to synchronizing them for
Just
earlier March.
and like just the rationale behind that, John, it's labour, it's probably uniformity of management group afterwards, is it, or what's driving you for that?
Yeah, and then if there's a ewe lamb that can't rear twins, rather than it maybe being a pet lamb, if there's not many ewes left to cross foster, there's maybe more ewes available to cross foster on at the start, and you're that bit more fresh, just for even managing them and for lambing them, so that you're hopefully going to reduce issues, and there's less disease around the sheds too, so they have a better chance
No,
to get going.
no, I think it's a fair comment. Look, we talked there like a scanner 1.4, you're getting a good hit with those ewe lambs. Your adult ewes, where are you scanning with them?
So the year gone by, they stand at 1.88.
Okay. Both, like, you have a high enough output flock on both sides, so you have. How do you go about managing, like, you're going to have a nice proportion of triplets coming through as well. How do you go about managing them and the yearling ewes?
So the ewes rearing triplets and the ewe lambs rearing twins will be kept together. So this year they were both kept together on the home block. So they'll be fed concentrates for 6 weeks post lambing, and then the lambs will be introduced to concentrates via creep feeder. So that's just to help them along a little bit, so that the lambs aren't massively behind a ewe rearing twins or a ewe lamb rearing a single. It depends on numbers if the ewe lambs rearing singles are left as well with that group. Otherwise they go with the ewes rearing twins and are on no concentrates.
Like there's sometimes be a bit of a reluctance to rearing lambs on twins or even the twins on yearlings, but I suppose the key thing you're doing there is you're providing enough nutrition support to carry them through, and if anything's dropping off, obviously you're taking them off.
Yeah, yeah. So if there's anything really dropping off, they're brought in and into the pet pen. But we'll find we kind of will see that they'll be kind of kept in a little bit longer before they go out, and you'll have an idea before they nearly go out if they're going to work as a ewe lamb rearing twins or a ewe rearing triplets. So a lot of the problems are figured before they head out to grass, which is realistically is a few days longer than if it was a ewe rearing twins. They're in the shed longer.
But it is one of those keys to that system working. You have to have a suitable ewe and a suitable ewe lamb that's able to actually rear them and carry them. So that extra wee bit of time pays for itself in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to mind them. If they're not minded, you're going to be left with nothing. So like, they have to be minded and kept a closer eye on than the other ewes in the flock.
Look, you chat there about them being on the home farm. Obviously, they're on the radar, so most of the handling systems it lends itself to it. How do you go about stocking the other blocks of land on the farm? It is fragmented. You have a bit of travelling between them. How do you manage that during the year?
Yeah, so everything is turned out post lambing. So kind of your start to middle of March, they're all on the home block, and then come the end of May, we start bringing batches of 20 to the out blocks, and then come the middle of April this year, we had the out blocks as stocked as we would like, so that we kind of had some ewes and lambs on the out blocks for 2 weeks longer than others. Just the grass would be a bit slower to get going. Some of them have harsher conditions, and just they're a little bit more challenging. So the grass doesn't start just to grow as quick. So if we brought the full number that are out there at the moment, be very short on grass from the outset. So we kind of stock them appropriately, that we're not having to bring them home before we want to.
So, like they're saying, you have to set stock each of them blocks basically from that turnout period up to weaning.
Yeah. So the same ewes that go out onto them out blocks in April will be there until weaning, which is going to be this week. So they've been there for the guts of three months really, in a kind of a paddock rotational system.
So, you've each block kind of set up for grazing on its own. Obviously, handling is the other key thing on those, and it's one of the challenges in fragmented farms. How do you manage that?
So we've small handling facilities set up, small basic handling facilities set up that we can do all up on two out of the three, and the third one is we kind of only set it up. It has a fully kind of on its own out block this year, so we would bring them home if they needed a lot of treatment. But we have a pen set up for getting them into the trailer, so that if there's simple things like pour on onto the lambs, it can be all done down there.
It's one of those other challenges you have with a fragmented farm, and I suppose it's one of them investments you've made that has left it feasible.
Yeah, absolutely. You couldn't be bringing all the groups home if you needed to do anything with them. You just spend too much time on the road. So having a facility that you can hunt them in, dose them, and set them back out, or give them cobalts to the lambs, or it really cuts down on time. That it's a lot less movement of animals and unnecessary movement of animals, I suppose.
Yeah, I understand. And you're avoiding the kind of performance loss by putting jobs off as well. It's an investment. It does pay for itself. It's one of those challenges you have to overcome as well. You have a lot going on. You have a lot of stock on that farm. Grass wise on the farm, how do you manage it? Like the home block would probably be the best of the ground on the farm. So you're talking about coming up to weaning. Do you wean back to the home farm, Jonathan, or how do you manage post weaning?
Yeah, so the heifers stay full time on the home block, and then obviously the ewes and lambs that were the ewes rearing triplets and the ewe lambs rearing twins are kept on the home block. Everything else was away. When it comes to weaning in the next week or two, the lambs will all be brought home and finished on the home block. We'd have a good proportion of our silage made at this point, just the way the grass coat went this year. So there'll be a lot of after grass coming on as well in the next few weeks. And then the ewes are kept on the outblocks with a small proportion of silage kept on some fields, but a lot of them are unsuitable for making silage on. So that's
Yeah,
kind of how we stock it, kind of
yeah.
post July.
You have to kind of manage the suit. Look, we talk about the lambs. You're finishing all lambs on the farm.
Yeah, all the lambs are finished on the farm, and they go up to ICM in Navan with the Sligo Leitrim Lamb Producer Group. So they go every week. So
So you have a lot of lambs to finish the farm. It kind of brings us to this latter half of the year. Talk to me a little bit about lamb finishing, how you approach it. So you're supplementing triplets and yearlings up to weaning, post weaning. Talk to me a little bit about lamb finishing. What's your strategy?
Yeah, so looking at work that the UCD had done back in pre 2020, did a lot of we're looking at finishing lambs with Red Start. So I had been up there for a good few years and saw the benefits of it, first-hand benefits of it. So we sold some in 2020, found it very, very good, but we just the catch of having to reseed the following year just kind of caught us. It just didn't suit our system. So I had been doing a lot of work with multi-species swards in Dublin as well at the time. So that was the next thing to try. So we sowed the first 7 acres there, or first 7 acres then, back in 2022, with the idea of using it as a finishing block for our lambs.
Full background for those that don't know you fully, like you've done a lot of work on this. You complete your PhD looking at various aspects of sheep production, but during that time, the multi-species trial was running in UCD as well. So you've seen a lot of this firsthand. You decided to implement it. Okay, so the multi-species, you've started them. Then what's happened since? So for that first 7 acres, you kept going every year, did you afterwards, or?
Yeah, exactly. So I had ran the multi-species trial for the 2 years in Dublin, so kind of got used to seeing how it would look and grazing heights and residency time. So we started in 2022 back here, put 7 acres in July, subdivided it into three main blocks, and started grazing around the 1st of September, where we put the ram lambs on it to finish them. And every year since we have put in more multi-species. So 2023, 2024, and then 2025 we have put in some a little bit earlier, put it in May this year, at the end of May this year.
It's a full multi-species sward that's gone in. So what all is going in that mix maybe first, and we'll talk a little bit about the management of it then.
Yeah, so it's the multi-species sward that's the grant approved sward. Exactly. So we'll get the €300 per hectare grant for putting that in, which is another nice bonus for putting it in. So there's perennial ryegrass in it. There's some timothy. There is white clover, red clover, plantain, and chicory in the mix. So we are very happy with it. We finished the lambs on it year one, and we put only chemical fertilizer on it, and we won't put any slurry on it year one. Year two, we obviously have it then for spring, so that's where the ewe lambs rearing twins and the ewes rearing triplets are grazed in a rotational system prior weaning. And some of them paddocks may have to be taken out for silage if it gets too strong. We don't mind going in to take bales out of it. It just needs that little bit longer wilt time because there's that more water in the herbs.
Yeah, but they're lower than actually that bit lower DM.
Exactly. And then so year three, so the current 2023 sward is still in its three paddocks that we would have subdivided into, which is used in spring if we sometimes with the ewes and lambs with that are grazing the year two sward, they'll sometimes need a little bit more depending on growth rate and time of year. So they'll have first preference to that as well as going in cutting it. So there's quite a lot of come year three, there's not a lot of herbs left, but there's obviously a good percentage of clover and obviously perennial ryegrass. So it's really good. It's performing really well for us. Which the 4-year multi-species sward, it's on a 3-cut system at the moment. So we grazed it in spring with the ewes before they went to the outblocks, and then it's been cut twice. So it got cut 2 weeks ago, and it was cut the 1st of May as well. So we'll get a third cut off it before grazing it over the autumn. So we're very happy with that sward.
John, I think to be fair, I could probably do a whole episode with you on this one, but I'm going to ask you a little bit more about it. One thing that struck me, and I had the benefit of chatting to you about this beforehand, but you actually treat that as a finishing block. So a lot would put in a reseed, I might put this in, and it forms part of the rotation of finished lambs. You approached this slightly differently from year one. You treated it solely as a finishing block, and you talked about the subdivisions in it. Talk to me a little bit more about that and why you think that was important, that it essentially was just set stock for that group.
Yeah, so we put the we put a batch of lambs on it with the view that they'll be finished off that they won't have to go back onto grass only swards. So we're trying to keep the diet as consistent as possible. So if they to get the full benefits, so like they're going to take time to adjust to the clovers and the herbs. If they've only been on grass, only if they've been on grass and clover, you're already a little bit ahead of yourself. But we keep them on the multi-species till they're finished, and then as if the growth increases, if it's just getting ahead, we'll add in more lambs, but enough that they'll not have to be taken off that sward, so that the lambs, once they're on it until they're gone to the factory.
So you have no
So
acclimatization issues, but also they're solely grazing that. So any adaptation that has to happen, that they've adapted to the diet basically.
yes, well, there is a high proportion of grass in the sward, so it's not like they're going from one thing to another thing completely. So they are getting that bit of grass in the diet anyway. And even when they graze it the first time, they will eat the grass and leave the herbs. But when it comes to the second grazing or the second paddock they get to, they'll nearly go straight for the herbs. So it does take a few days for them to get used to them. And then when they get used to them, they'll go for them first.
So this kind of leads into the next part of this, and we know sheep are very selective grazers. Talk to me a little bit about the grazing management. What are you aiming for? Kind of grazing heights going into it, or post grazing? How long is the rotation between those? Because it's the challenge of managing it as a grass sward or managing it as a multi-species sward. So maybe just chat to me a little bit about what you've done year one on those.
When you're grazing the multi-species, it's not going to look as uniform as your perennial ryegrass sward. That's one thing that's kind of you need to get into your head to start with, or you're going to be kind of fighting a losing battle. So we grazed it down to 5 centimeters and took them out and moved them on, trying to keep a low residency time in each paddock. As they're selective grazers, obviously, when they pick out the herbs, they'll keep picking the herbs and clover and leave the stemmier ryegrass if it does get to stem. So that'll then therefore hamper your herb and clover content and regrowth, and you're going to be left with a lot of unpalatable grass, that maybe has just gone too strong because they've avoided it. So we will go in year two onwards and top to the 5 centimeters if required. But what we found is when you are going in to top it to get the quality back for the regrowth, you're not actually topping the herbs and the clovers because they've eaten them. It's only the stem of the ryegrass that maybe was a bit stronger. I suppose it is getting that little bit stronger because we're trying to give the herbs and clover that little bit more time to regrow. So we're looking at kind of 21 to 25 day rotate before they go back into a sward. And that obviously is letting the ryegrass get that little bit stronger. So we are aware we're going to have to win maybe with the topper, or that group of heifers are great for cleaning out a paddock year two on, but have to be very careful with the weather. It is a little bit more open, so we can't put them in if we're going to have rain for the day, or we're not going to be left with a whole pile.
Like, I think to be fair to say it, and from what you're describing there, if you're going to get the full benefit out of it, you have to really manage it appropriately, both in terms of the different heights rotation, but also that balance in bad weather.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to damage the herbs and clovers by grazing it in awful conditions every time. It wouldn't be a fair comparison. Just like grass, if you graze one field in the worst conditions every month, you'll be thinking it's not doing great or it's not holding up, but it's not really a fair reflection. So we are giving it a little bit of a special treatment. But I suppose you'd mind a reseed if it was a grass only reseed anyway, that you'd have it for years to come. And I suppose by going in and topping, we're trying to keep the grass good as well, because we know the herbs aren't going to be there after year three on, like the stuff we've sown in 2023. There is some herbs in it, but a lot of it is grass and clover. So we really want a good grass and clover sward afterwards as well, that we don't have to go in and reseed, so that we're getting numerous years after the herbs are gone out of it as a good grass and clover sward.
And that's probably the other interesting thing in it. Like, you've a couple of years of it in now, so you've seen it right the way through. You are going to lose some of them out of it. What does that look like in year two? Like you're targeting that you mentioned earlier for high priority stock, your yearlings, your triplet rare neos. What does that sword look like in years two and years three? What is left in it?
So it does vary, depending on the month. So like back in March, you're kind of looking at it, and there was a lot less clover because it wasn't just clover hadn't just got going, and there wasn't as many herbs. But now you can see quite a nice few herbs and clovers through your grass sward. For last year's, for the previous year, so your year three sward, you're looking at grass clover with occasional herbs dotted through it. Some parts of the field, if it's slightly wetter area, you'll see a lot less herbs. If it's kind of a drier hill, that they kind of sometimes will survive a little bit better. But as I said, we have it split into three. So each of the three blocks, you nearly get a different percentage left. It just depends on how it was grazed and the conditions it was grazed in, all affected. There's a lot of moving parts in it.
Okay, so you're getting 2 very good years, a third good enough year depending on the field, and then by the 4th year, it's a grass clover sward.
Yeah, so you get first year obviously is the real finishing block for the lamb. Second year we're getting a good benefit for our EOs and lambs that need that a little bit more attention. And then the third year you're not getting just as much. You're getting great benefit from a good grass and clover sward, and the herbs then are a benefit, but you can't really be relying on them.
But it has formed part of your system now, and like you have a fair dedicated block in it. Your plans, I assume, Jonathan, is keep rotating that around the home farm continually?
Yeah, so we're picking fields that are not performing. So I record on pasture base, so I can see over time which fields aren't recording. And it's obvious too. There's some fields that are performing badly, and then when you look on pasture base to see how badly they actually are performing. So that's the plan. It's important to kind of manage the weeds the year before. There's not a lot you can't spray. Once you've the multi-species sown, or you'll kill what you've sown. So you really do need to control the weeds the year before. So it just takes a bit more forward planning on that part. But yes, we plan to keep putting more next year as well.
In terms of overall performance on that, you're getting high levels of lamb performance off it. You're finishing a lot of lambs. Well, it's not necessarily only down to the multi-species, also the excellent grassland management, but you're finishing your lambs with very little input then on them swords.
Yeah, exactly. So we're the main bunches of lambs on the 3 outblocks. They've seen no concentrates, and they're not going to either. All going well, they'll be finished on the multi-species only. The only ones that have seen the concentrates are the pet lambs and the OviCast, the triplet lambs, and the twins on the O lambs. And that will gradually reduce a little bit too. That they've only been on a small, they're only been on 200 grams maximum a day, really. So it's a small amount in the greater picture.
So yeah, long term is cutting down inputs on the farm, and it's just the overall system is lending itself to it. John, I'm not doing justice in terms of time I'm giving you to discuss what's happening on that farm, but for anyone that is interested, they're going to get an opportunity. You're hosting this year's Irish Grassland Association Farm Walk.
Yeah, so on July 8th, the Grassland Association are coming in the evening from 6:30. I think there's refreshments from 6. So there's going to be a look at the system as a whole, with a focus on the grassland management, how we incorporate the contract rearing heifers and the mid-season lambing, how we incorporate the multi-species in the reseeds, how we use it each year, and then a look at the stuff that was sown in May, along with the fields that were sown in the last 2 or 3 years.
There really is a lot going on. I was fortunate to have the opportunity to see the stock on the farm a couple of years ago. It's well worth a visit for them alone, but yeah, multi-species, how that heifers are incorporated, there's a lot of the story there, and it'll be a great opportunity for people to actually see what you're doing and maybe take something home from it. So definitely would encourage anybody to go to it. I'll include that in the show notes for details on it. Look, it was great catching up with you. It's something I probably should revisit with you at some stage. Just talked a little bit more about how the management works on it, but really appreciate you coming on, Jonathan, and sharing that with us. And I think if anyone wants to go up and see the system, yourself and your dad Philip are running, well worth that trip. So it is next week.
Thank you, Kieran, for having me.
We'll leave it there for this week's episode. I have included a link in the show notes to the Irish Grassland Association's webpage where you can get more details about that event that's happening on Jonathan and Philip's farm on the 8th of July from 6 to 8:30 p.m. That's it for me for updates from our sheep programme. Keep an eye on our Twitter page at Teagasc Sheep. I'm Kieran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts.